I'm here with Gillian Goerzen, who is a health and fitness coach, author of Elephant in the Gym, this most amazing book, creator of Super You Studios, mom, wife, all around fantastic person. And I'm so excited about this conversation because I just think that our health and fitness and our bodies are just such a huge trigger for most of us. And this weaving of empathy into a fitness approach is just something I find fascinating. So I'm going to just dive right in.
Awesome.
Let's start with how you define empathy and how it shows up in the work that you do.
I really love Brene Brown's kind of definition of empathy, that kind of the capacity to kind of be with somebody in relatedness and vulnerability, to see where somebody is and offer your hand to them and say, I see you, you're not alone. Like, I think that is so desperately needed in our culture, and we're kind of missing the mark a lot of the time. I'm sure you would like, yep.
Yeah,
in
right?
so many different areas of our life.
Well, it's true. And, I started this journey, it was really focused around like bringing empathy to leadership. And then it just starts popping up everywhere. It's like, I've been having these fantastic conversations with money, with our body, with, just it's everywhere. And so I'd love to know how it shows up in your work.
Yeah. Okay. So everywhere.
Right.
I think in a lot of different ways it shows up. So, I think that we can't be compassionate with others if we can't be compassionate with us. And I say that and I'm like, it's a bit of a chicken egg. I don't know really which one comes first.
Yeah.
We can't be compassionate with others if we can't be we can't be empathetic with others if we can't be compassionate with ourselves, and vice versa. I really think it goes both ways. And I think so much of the relationship we have with body, with ourselves, and our relationship with health that kind of follows that, requires a deep sense of compassion and empathy. Like, this is hard. It is hard to live in a diet culture, to swim in this soup of diet culture and have a healthy relationship with your body, have a healthy relationship with food, with fitness, and one that is grounded in compassion and kindness and respect, because we are pitted against our body. We are are set up to believe that it is us versus body.
Yeah.
And, it's this adversarial approach with body, and instead of like, no, this body here, this is a gift. And what if the way I'm showing up and how my body presents in this world is not happening to me, but happening for me? This is one of the pieces I've been really percolating right now is, I've just going right into it. I've entered perimenopause, and really hard. Like, I hit perimenopause like a freaking brick wall right in the middle of the pandemic, which was really quite a joy for myself and everybody in my life. I had all the hot flashes, all the things, all the symptoms. I thought I was losing my mind. And then I saw a nurse practitioner, and she's like, "Oh, honey, like,
Okay.
you need some support. Like, this is big." And one of the symptoms and one of the things that's happened to my body is that my body has changed shape in the last. Yeah. And so, as someone whose whole platform is love the skin you're in, I'm like, all of a sudden, whoa.
Oh,
You just, what?
not this one.
Change the, like, I was cool like 20 pounds ago, but you just changed the dynamic here. What's going on, body? And I found myself in the beginning of the pandemic, I was like, I'm having a hard time being friendly with you, right? You changed the game.
Well,
and so it's been a real, like, and again, and this is where I'm like, I've really come to this realization. This isn't happening to me. This is happening for me. This is giving me an opportunity to experience a higher level of growth and acceptance and liberation from like this constraint that diet culture has put upon me in terms of how I relate to my body. Yeah.
Okay, so much there, but I think
sorry, I went like, woo, let's do this, Erin.
No, let's do it. Yeah, so I finally am on the other side of that. So fully now, like, menopausal, if you will. But I get it. Like, those last 5 years have been just insane. Yeah, just really reconciling all the things that are going on. And you look back, our family has a lot of, I know you're raising two boys. Our extended family is predominantly female. So I'm looking at all of these young women, kind of the oldest is 18 and the youngest is, 4. And just the changes that group is going through. Ooh. And how, the different levels of acceptance and but I really love what you said around this adversarial relationship, because you see it. And I mean, we were both young women once too, and it's not always the easiest thing. And then we get a little older and we just find our feet, and then we become mothers, and then that whole thing changes, and then it's like, okay, I just got this thing,
changed it, try again. Yeah.
It's like just when you get comfortable with it. I love what you said about being forced into a deeper level of like growth and acceptance, and just that whole approach to self. And really, it's kind of the inside part of empathy for me. And I totally agree. Like, you can't.
I'm giggling, Erin, because my dog is trying madly to get into my office right now. I don't know if you can hear that scratching.
Oh, that's funny. Don't worry.
Like, Mom.
Mine's laying here kind of moaning beside me. So if you hear that, it's just, this is what live conversations are all about.
Isn't it? Welcome to the pandemic.
Welcome to life. Yeah, what I loved about your book and your whole
I'm just going to let him in, Erin, because it's just going to be easier.
Sure.
Keep talking.
Well, I was just going to say, what I loved about your book and your whole approach really to health and fitness is the fact that you approach it from this inside empathy part. Like, you're doing all of the things, the self-compassion, which is the kindness, the mindfulness, just really bringing that awareness that we're all in this together, right? Like, there's nobody exempt from these things.
And I'm the first person to tell my clients that, guys, I'm in it too. I'm in it. And here's the thing we don't seem to understand about relationship with body. We're like, I'm body positive now. Check, here we go. And I'm like, no. There's a working model that I'm working on for my next book. And it's all about the continuum that we are on in our relationship with body. And, it's not this flip the switch, all of a sudden I'm healthy and happy in my body, and I'm completely body respectful all the time, and I totally love the skin I'm in. No. We have this ongoing relationship on a continuum where we're constantly in this ebb and flow. We're constantly, things are coming at us that we maybe didn't see coming, and then we have to respond to that. And it's this perpetual practice, which is how I frame health as well, right? It's this ongoing practice of how I relate to my health. How do I relate to movement? How do I relate to nutrition? How do I relate to sleep? How do I relate to the self-care practices around mental health, around spiritual health? So it's this ongoing practice and ever evolving practice, right? Yeah. So it's not this static, I got it nailed. I'm, and that's where I think we go so wrong in health and in relationship with body.
Totally. You said something there that triggered a thought for me. And because one of the things that I face in my work is this desire to shove all our feelings in a little box and keep them nice and tidy, right? Because you can't cry in the boardroom. I'll be the first to admit I've cried in many boardrooms and many offices and on many job sites. And, I think building this capacity to be okay with those feelings and that emotion, like what you said around, it is a continuum, it is a practice. Do I have to love it all the time? No. Right. And I'm going to feel those feelings, but such a big part of being able to move through them is feeling it, isn't it?
Yeah, well, and you nailed it, because that's exactly what I'm thinking in my head as you're saying that. The merit of the fact that you actually are having the bump means that you have and you have awareness of oh, I just noticed that I'm being a real jerk to myself right now. I'm really having some negative body talk happening, or I'm doing a lot of body checking. I'm really talk about confronting being on video. I don't particularly love seeing myself talk while I'm having a conversation. It is very distracting because we're not used to seeing ourselves, and we tend to kind of get in our heads and start to get critical of how do we look, what do they think about how I'm looking. All these things start happening, but the fact that we can notice that stuff, that's the practice. It's I see you, I can come back. And so part of what the practice is, and I talk about that, the frame I talk about this with is the idea of a labyrinth, and I actually no idea where this idea came from, and it wasn't my original idea, but I kind of took it and run with it. But it's the idea of a labyrinth, and at the core of the labyrinth is kind of the point of like the challenge, the point of the difficulty, the point of the kind of discontent or the rub. And then as you kind of go as a straight line out of the labyrinth, there's always that rub point, that sticking point. But as we travel a labyrinth around, as we walk outward from the core, it's still pretty tight. We come back to the sticky point kind of frequently. But over the course of time, as we continue our journey on the labyrinth, as we continue in the practice, we get further and further between sticking points. And the proportionate amount of time we spend in the sticking point is less and less and less because we continue the practice. So we get better at like noticing it. I see it. There it is again. And we can kind of reframe and adjust and reset very quickly, as opposed to when you first start the practices, it's kind of like, you might be in it for a week or 2 or a month where you're just like, blech, I just feel gross. I just feel, I feel cranky with my body, frustrated, adversarial with my body, instead of, that's adversarial thinking. That's, critical thinking, and, do re-engaging in negative body talk. Can I circle back to this place of love and kindness and respect?
Love it.
Yeah.
And I love the visual. So the question that sits here for me is, do you have like a go-to place you start with people, a practice, like, because so much of it starts in our head, right? And it is that self-talk. Is there like a go-to practice that kind of starts everyone, or is it really a very unique approach? I mean, it will be a unique approach, but I'm just wondering if there's a similar starting point.
Yeah, I think it's both, because I do a lot of group coaching and I also do one-to-one coaching. Right. So within group coaching, I think the place we often need to start is just by starting to increase our awareness of diet culture and start to recognize what messages we're being fed about our body, about health, and start to see I always call it pulling back the curtain on Oz.
Yeah.
And once you pull back the curtain, you can't unsee it. Yeah. And that's sometimes liberating. It's sometimes infuriating. So a lot of times that first step is just this awareness and education around what is diet culture? How does it influence us? What are some concrete examples of what diet culture is and what are the messages that it's leaving us with? And then how are we in taking those messages and ingraining them into our own beliefs and values?
Yes.
And then as you start to notice that, you can be like, I actually think this about my body. Where did that idea come from? Right. And as we can start to, again, that's, similarly, my job as a coach isn't to kind of unravel or unpack the past, but to start to become aware of that you've got some stuff and then move forward from that. So I do think it is helpful to kind of be curious about where did that idea come from, without kind of diving, sometimes we do need to go see a counselor and work through that stuff.
Yes.
But mostly it's about, okay, interesting. I have this idea about body, or I have this idea about fitness, that, fitness has to be hard, or fitness movement has to be, sweaty and gritty and uncomfortable. Where did those ideas come from? And then how do I want to reframe? So a lot of it is awareness, education, and then looking at how do I choose powerfully to relate moving forward from here? How do I want to feel in my body? How do I want to feel in relationship with my body? And then starting to look at that visionary piece. And then that's kind of the hub of, once we have the kind of awareness, then it's kind of getting clear on, well, how do I want to feel in my body? Because oftentimes nobody's even asked someone that. Like,
no, I'm sitting here right now going like, how do I want to feel in my body? I'm like, very good question.
How do you want to feel? I mean, and this is the thing, right? We tend to, in the traditional health and fitness industry, we tend to, specifically fitness, because that's kind of my background, we go to a trainer and we say, okay, I want to lose 30 pounds, or I want to, be able to run 5 kilometers. We have a very tangible, specific goal that we want to achieve. But oftentimes what we don't discuss, which I actually think is way more important, is what's driving that desire to change. What's behind that desire to change your body, to work towards that? And not to say that it might not be a totally valid, reasonable reason,
right?
But what's behind that, so that we can start to understand what's driving your push to change, and is it grounded in kindness and body respect, or is it grounded in this idea that your body's broken and you need to fix it?
Yeah, it's so interesting that you talk about that, because there was a period of time, probably like maybe 5 to 10 years ago, where I did a lot of racing, like running, road
Yeah,
racing. But I noticed that if I wasn't signed up for the next race, I wasn't doing anything in between, right? And so
yeah,
it's like, am I just doing this to like check the box of a race? Like,
yeah,
how do I build a more sustainable practice, right? So it's
yeah.
not just about crushing the 10K and then sitting on the
Right,
couch, right? Like,
right,
how do
right.
I make it a part of how I show up? And so that was a pretty interesting
Well, and I think actually that's been one of the things that's been so interesting through this pandemic, is that no longer do we have, I mean, we're now or race organizers are adjusting and pivoting, and now we have all
virtual.
these
Yeah.
virtual races. But prior to that happening, I was leading a virtual group called the Run Crew, and they were like, one of the things we were coaching all of our members on was, how can you find your joy for running without races?
Yeah.
And if, distance motivates you, can you run just to run because running long distances makes you feel happy, or running 10Ks makes you feel accomplished? And that's not a bad thing. There
No.
is nothing wrong with checking boxes, but it also comes down to, do you look forward to your runs? I mean, most of the time when the weather's not persnickety, but like we all have those days where we don't wanna. And but really coming back to kind of what's my why, what's my reason behind when I don't want to.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I just wanted to touch on the point, because I think it's a really good, I think it's just so important, especially in the coaching industry. Like, it's not therapy, although that does serve a purpose. And so do you find that sometimes clients and people you coach need to couple both? Because I
yeah,
certainly do in my practice as
yeah,
well. So,
definitely. And I'm a big believer in, I have a few counselors that I refer to that
mm,
I really like, that kind of get where I'm coming from. So then we can be kind of this allied front.
oh, I love
Not
it.
to get, I don't want to talk about it like a war, but like, though it is a
No,
little
but
bit
I
of.
think that's the thing. If you're getting, it's a consistent messaging, right?
Totally, totally. Because if I then refer to a counselor who isn't body positive, because that exists out there, it's really important to me that the consistent message is, your body's not broken. Your body's awesome.
Mhm.
Let's move you forward from this place of body kindness and body respect. And at the very least, if body kindness or body respect feels like, oh, I don't even know how to do that, body neutrality is the place we kind of go to first, right? So
Okay.
we move from the disgust, from the hatred, which is so common, and we find our way to neutrality. Can I simply be neutral?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah,
even that sounds hard some days. Not some days.
100%.
Yeah.
None of it is easy.
Oh,
And it's specifically not easy because that inner work, as you know, as a coach, there's no outward reflection per
no.
se.
Yeah.
And so we as a culture are very, especially in health and fitness, are very attached to that outward reflection of change,
Yeah.
that before and after, which
Mm.
implicitly implies that thinner is better, that smaller is the health outcome that we should all be seeking.
Yeah.
But that inner work, that care of self, that love of self, that respect for body is actually far more powerful and sustainable than simply following a plan for 12 weeks and getting some results.
Right. Or the size of our jeans.
Yeah.
Um, can you talk to me about intuitive eating? Because I've seen it a lot, but we've also seen like intermittent fasting and all kinds of different diets and eating plans and all of this stuff. And
Yeah.
I'd love to know your
Yeah.
take on intuitive eating, and what is it and how
Yeah.
does it fit?
Amazing. Um, so I will preface this by I'm an intuitive eating counselor. So obviously it's an approach that I'm very passionate about because I went forward and got the training. Intuitive eating is a framework of an approach with eating and really with health. I actually almost think it's like it was originally released as a book and developed by two dietitians back in the mid 90s. Their first book came out in 1995, 1996. I might have that date wrong. Around then. And it's actually in its fourth edition, the book. And I actually think now it should almost be intuitive health, because it does encompass more than just eating and our relationship with food, though the majority of the book is focused around our relationship with food and body. So it's a framework of 10 principles whereby we reject diet mentality and this idea of diet culture and all the ideas that diet culture promotes, which is, smaller bodies or better bodies, that we need to follow a strict set of rules in order to fuel our bodies, which is inherently saying you as an individual do not have autonomy over your body.
Right.
You don't know how to feed your body because obviously, because you haven't figured it out.
Yeah,
right?
If I need the checklist, I
can't. You need the checklist because obviously you're it's very authoritarian. It's very dismissive. It's, diet culture, not intuitive eating, is really coming from this place of you must follow this set of rules. You must take this authoritarian approach because you don't know better. And what intuitive eating is saying is you do. You as an individual can become attuned to your body. You were born knowing how to nourish your body. You were born knowing intuitively how to begin to move. If you watch infants, they move to where they're curious, right? So they move, they start to crawl and move and start to explore their body because they're innately curious. We are innately curious as a culture. And so what would it look like if we moved with that kind of curiosity? Like move because I'm like, oh, that feels good. I'm going to do that more. Like, what if we, without making it silly, like, what if you just did movement that felt good in your body?
Right.
I mean, like you don't have the joke. I would say
food that felt good in your body, but like from a place of awareness and connection, right? That's really 100%. What I'm hearing.
Yeah. So what the framework in the 10 principles aims to do is get you back listening to your body, starting to reclaim some of the trust that's been broken with our bodies as we ignore hunger signals. We, stuff down and numb our feelings. We don't tend to honor our fullness. We eat beyond fullness. All these rules that we have, having unconditional permission to eat. And that's probably the principle that gives the most pushback. It's like, what unconditional permission to eat? That sounds dangerous.
Right.
So what's interesting about unconditional permission to eat and having freedom around food is that when you actually give yourself unconditional permission to eat whatever you want, whenever you want, as much as you want, but you also in concert are listening to your body, listening and honoring your body's signals. Over time, when so what happens when we restrict food is we put food up on this like, pedestal, like, ooh, bad, naughty, and what do we do as teenagers when we're told we can't do something or we must not do that?
Oh yeah. We break that rule. So, we want to do it.
Yeah, we do. So inherently we create this, again, authoritarian, almost parental relationship where we have this thing up on the pedestal that we must not have. So what do we do when we have the opportunity to have it? We go bananas.
Yeah.
Instead, if we take that rule off and we give ourselves permission, and this is a process that we go through. It's not like this, like unconditional permission. You start going through what we call systematic habituation. You start to explore these foods, start to see how you can relate to them. You slow down and actually start to become more mindful and present, not with just your body, but how foods make you feel. And eventually we find our this place of gentle nutrition where we can become connected to this, our personal body's relationship with foods. Again, it's all based in this premise of there's no one right way to eat, which I have said for years. There's no one right way. There are a gazillion different ways. And the one that works for your body is not only going to evolve with you, but it's going to be unique to you, but it's going to evolve with you. So, we have to remember that what worked for my body when I was 19, training for Ironman and doing all these different things is different than me at 42 in a perimenopausal state, exercising 5 to 6 days a week.
Right.
With much less intensity. So, I'm fine. You have to find the way that works for your body now and recognize that that's going to change over time as well.
Cool. I'm fascinated. I'm going to be digging into more of that.
Yeah.
Where can people find your work?
They can find me at superu.ca. That's kind
Okay.
of my primary website. And then I also have a platform for my studio, and that's superustudio.com. And then I'm on all the socials. Instagram handle is just Gillian Goerzen, all one word. And on Facebook, my page is Super U Fit, all one word.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious. Your book is The Elephant in the Gym. What is the elephant in the gym? What is the elephant?
It's the elephant. The elephant is the thing we're not talking about, which is this idea that, you know, that your body is broken, and that, you know, and then this whole fitness thing that we're all trying to do and be on the plan and follow the rules, it's not working.
Right.
It's not working for the majority of people out there. You know, there's, you know, that 95% of all diets fail within 1 to 5 years stat. There's some arguments about whether or not that's really legit, but, you know, my anecdotal evidence would say that, yeah, pretty much.
Pretty true.
Pretty much, you know, 82% of Canadians aren't currently meeting the guidelines for movement and activity to maintain, you know, good health, which is basically in governmental standards, like the avoidance of disease.
Right.
And so, you know, as a culture, we're not getting it. And that's kind of, you know, but yet, you know, on every corner there's a gym or a studio, or, you know, you Google and there's like 1,000,001 plans and programs and meal plans. And we as a culture, I think, are more educated about nutrition, movement, and bodies than ever before. But I think we are misinformed more than anything. There is so much information out there. Some of it is good. A lot of it is not. And a lot of it is, you know, grounded in the science and all these things. And a lot of it is just somebody's opinion. And I think that's also at the root of what we're kind of experiencing as well, for sure.
It sounds like too that it's what do I want to say? Like when we approach it from a place of just like checking a box or signing up for a program without really connecting into who we are is where, you know, where we maybe go wrong. And really that first step is like you said, kind of what is healthy for me? What are the goals? Why am I doing this? And really starting from that place of self-reflection.
Absolutely. And I think getting clear on, you know, what's in this, what's driving this change for me. And is this change coming from a genuine desire to live a full and happy life and be fulfilled in my life? Or is it being driven from this desire to change my body and viewing my body as this thing that is broken?
Yeah.
You know, can I come from this place of love, gratitude, and respect, as opposed to my body is a problem?
Yeah.
And then
what was your favorite chapter in the book? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I was gonna say the other major issue with the kind of the program or the plan is that, you know, it's not customized to you.
Right.
You know, and so we tend to do this thing that I call, we jump in the deep end. We go, you know, 0 to hero, and we kind of start and we're like, I'm going to do all the things. That's it. I've reached my final straw. I'm going to make the change starting Monday. I'm no more sugar, no more caffeine, no more, you know, more XYZ, whatever those things are that you're going to put off limits. And also I'm going to hit the gym 3 times, and I'm going to go for 2 runs, and I'm going to, whoa, like I'm exhausted just hearing that. And then we wonder why, like 3 days in, we're like, yeah, no, that's not going to happen. And so again, let's not jump in the deep end before we know how to swim. Let's start in the shallow end. Let's learn how to float. Let's learn how to breathe. And so one of the things I talk about with most people, again, one of those foundational practices, is let's start with one thing. What's one thing you can work on starting like right now that is resonant for you? And I have a whole process that I go through with people. Like, what's one thing? And then let's really be clear on why we're doing it. Let's, you know, really reflect on how that's going to work for your life. Let's come up with a bit of a plan. Let's understand how habits even work. Let's understand the framework under which, like, how do we even develop a habit? And then what are the practices I need to put in place to actually make that be successful? And then let's get to work and practice it.
Yeah.
And then let's review it. Let's check in. Does that work? Is it working? And permission to adjust course, remembering that this is always this constant evolving process, right? It's like the first time you try something, that's the first iteration of the habit. And it might not be the one that sticks, and that's okay.
The one we end up with.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So a couple more questions. What was your favorite chapter in the book to write?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, no, I definitely know that some pushed me more than others.
Okay, well, let's go there because that's the next
Yeah.
question. What was the hardest one to write?
Yeah, I think writing my story was probably one of the hardest parts for me. The easiest, but also the hardest.
Yeah.
It, you know, you gotta think I've dealt with all that stuff and I've processed all that stuff, and then I'm writing it and I'm like, all this stuff is bubbling up for me. I'm like, oh, okay, back to the counselor I go, to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. The other one that I found really pushed me and challenged me in a really good way was this section. I can't remember, actually, isn't this funny? I can't remember which chapter this is, but it's the chapter where I get into super, where I talk about my acronym of super, which is I should remember my own acronym. Super, just having a strategic plan,
Yeah.
your unique priority, identifying your unique priorities. P, your plan, having perspective within your plan. E, evaluating your environments, and then R, establishing your routines. What's funny about that chapter and that acronym is that initially, when in the first iteration of the book, and as you know, having written the book,
Yeah.
there's about 20 million.
Of course.
In the first version, the good old shitty first draft, it was super. It was SMART goal setting. I incorporated SMART goal setting because at the time that's what I was using. It was kind of what I was taught going through my Kines, going through all my training, and it never really like landed, and it always felt a little flat for me. But I hadn't ever been pushed to think of something different or better. And so I was like, okay, so what else could I do? Because my editor came back at me and basically said, so overdone.
Yeah.
It's like, that's literally what she wrote in the columns was, that's overdone. I'm like,
Yeah, those edits are hard to read sometimes.
super hard. And my initial reaction, of course, was she doesn't know what she's talking about. She's not a health professional. What is she like? Total like teenager response, or maybe more like a toddler response.
Yeah.
And so then I like, but this is what I'm paying her for. So can I just take the feedback and get curious about? And I was like, oh, she's right. Darn it. I need to dig deeper. I need to go further with this. And that's where I developed super. And super is like such a fundamental part of my practice now that I can't actually imagine
not having it.
Yeah. Which is funny. That's why I was like, what's the first?
What is the thing? Well, and what I love about what you just said is, even when we know it's not quite right or it's not quite what we want it to be, when someone reflects that back to us, our initial reaction is still to push it away. Right?
100%. Yes.
Yeah. So
inside we're like, I know you're right. And it's going to be so much work to develop. Like, it's going to be hard. I don't I don't want to, that's the, I don't want to, but then I had to come back to I want this book to be amazing. I want this book to change people's lives. And if I really want to change people's lives, I need to offer them something unique. I need to offer them something different that they haven't heard before, because the stuff they've heard before, I mean, even not that like to say that my entire book was all completely unique, like, wow, completely revolutionary.
Right.
And a lot of the stuff I'm sharing, people may have heard it before. That was one of my bad reviews on Amazon was she just took a whole bunch of old ideas and put them together. I'm like, okay, that's fair. Like, there are some, you may have heard some of these ideas before. It's not, earth shattering. And also I put them together in a way that might land differently for other people. Like that, I had this conversation with one of the, I have a mastermind that I sit in on every couple of weeks. And I said, I was working on a concept I'm playing around with. And she's like, I said, I think it's been done. And she's like, lots of things have been done, but who's done it? You haven't done it with your spin. And I think your spin on that will actually be really, really unique. And so she's like, do it anyway. It's okay if it's already been done. So, I mean, so I could have probably left the SMART goal setting, but I didn't.
But I'm glad you came up with super, because I do like it. It is powerful.
Yeah.
What do you want to leave people with? Where do they start?
I think I want to leave people with knowing your body's not broken. Like, there's nothing wrong with your body inherently. And here's the thing about bodies is that we live in a culture that has led us to believe that there is a singular, very narrow aesthetic that is what healthy looks like. But the reality is that that's not true. And actually, the research is quite abundant that we as a kind of collective, there is meant to be body diversity on this planet, and body diversity is healthy. In fact, there's a lot of the things that we have kind of accepted as hard truths that are not only untrue, they're actually really harmful. Ideas like, that, being in a bigger body is unhealthy. That's
Right.
actually not true. There's a lot of research to show that being slightly above those good old BMI categories. I
Yep.
mean, number one, BMI needs to go out the window. Here's a snippet. BMI was actually developed by a mathematician to evaluate how to effectively distribute um, health. They noticed a correlation between people in bigger bodies and health consequences. And so I want you to remember that I said correlation. There's a correlation there. And so they wanted to know where they should divert health fundings, so to speak. And so they developed this BMI. It was never meant to evaluate individuals ever. And
Right.
it's actually been the Canadian Medical Association, thank goodness, has finally seen the light, and they've actually specified in the treatment of obesity, we no longer use BMI. BMI is bye-bye. There are still a
Good.
lot of fitness companies, fitness professionals, there are still a lot of doctors that are still using it, and they need to stop. So if you're confronted by one of those folks, let them know that the times have changed. But there was actually research that was done. The BMI as a categorization was evaluated in, I'm not going to get the year right, so I just won't even say. It was like within the last 20, 30 years. And what the board that came, or the committee that came together to evaluate it, what they found from the research was that being in a higher BMI was actually more indicative of being protective to your health. And so they gave this advice, but what the categorization, the organization did was bumped the scales down, because that was where they were getting pressure from diet industry, getting pressure from all the industries that fund these things.
Yep.
And so we, all of that to say, question everything. Question your beliefs about body size, health, and get really curious about how you want to feel in your body, instead of how do you want your body to look. Because at the end of the day, I don't think anybody on their deathbed is thinking, I really wish I was 10 pounds leaner.
Right.
I really wish I'd done all those cool things. I really wish I'd had all these experiences in my life with people I love. I think those are the things we're thinking about, not if I looked good in that pair of skinny jeans.
I couldn't agree more. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here today. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, likewise. It flew by.
Oh,
Woo!
it sure does. There's just so much to talk about.
I love it.
All right. Thank you so much,
Right.
Gillian.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.